سلام و عرض ادب دارم خدمت بینندگان عزیز. بنده آری مقیمی هستم، پرزیدنت رایدینگ اسوسییشن ویلودیل. خب با اجازه شما بینندگان عزیز بحث رو ادامه میدیم با کاندید حزب محافظه کار در ویلودیل آقای Stan Cho. Stan, so I'm just going to turn to English right now, if you don't mind. Let me just start off by asking you a very simple question. Why are you in this race?
Oh, well, it's a very fair question, and I've been in this race now for 2 years, but it's something that we've been leading up to for a while. I grew up in Willowdale my whole life, and I own a business there. My family lives there, and of course I have lots of friends in the community. And there's something that's been happening that's not the Willowdale I know the last 15 years. And, I grew up watching my parents work very, very hard. And that hard work led to opportunities and ultimately success. I see that same drive, that same hard work and determination today. And knocking on doors for the last 2 years, I see it at the door. I see it with the people of our community. But those opportunities aren't there anymore. In the last 15 years, people are working harder than ever and they're taking home less. And we need to make sure that we are preserving that opportunity, that quality of life for the generations to come. And the Ontario Liberal governments have proven that that's not happening. And that's what we're here to fix. And that's why I've decided to run.
That's right. As you know, me and you are two individuals that know Willowdale very well. I have the pleasure of going canvassing with you once in a while, and I get to see and hear what the constituents are saying. And I'm absolutely appalled, in some cases. In some parts of the riding, people are fed up. 15 years of Liberal government has been too much. Too many, we've heard too many promises and few actions from this Liberal government. So there are 5 topics that I want to sort of jump into, if you don't mind. These 5 topics affect our riding greatly. So the number 1 is transit. If you want to talk about the subway line extension, as you know, a lot of students, a lot of the low-income voters are having a difficult time to get around the city. Why is that? That's because TTC is overcrowded. There's not enough public transportation systems, and therefore people are suffering. So do you want to just expand on that and tell us what do you think?
Sure, and I think the subway system, as you said, is certainly not something that you would expect from a city. The Greater Toronto Area has now 7 million people. A city of that size, certainly worldwide, has much better systems. And we know that. I mean, I have relatives who visit here from out of town and friends that all say the same thing, that our subway system is completely lacking, and it is overcrowded, as you mentioned it. And Willowdale has a particularly unique situation because it's really the only place in Canada where you have 2 subway stations, 2 lines that end in the neighborhood. I mean, you have Sheppard Station that ends from the Sheppard line, and then you have Finch Station, which ends from line 1 and just ends right at Finch.
That's right.
Now, that leads to more than just transit problems. Yes, it's overcrowded, but you have people from Richmond Hill, people from Scarborough commuting into our neighborhood to leave their cars, contribute to congestion and traffic, and then ride the subway down to work or wherever it is that they're heading. And of course, we can't blame them for that, but it's the system that needs improvement. And the system needs to make sense for today's sort of booming neighborhood that we have. Willowdale's 15 years ahead of its expected growth population, for population growth according to the growth plan. And that leads to all sorts of challenges. And the natural solution is really to extend Finch Subway Station to meet Highway 7 in Richmond Hill and to take the Sheppard line and to extend that out to where Line 1 loops around to the Spadina line and heads up to Vaughan. And these are the types of things that we really need to address. And first things first, we have to get Ontario back on track financially to be able to afford these things.
That's right. Well, Mr. Ford recently announced that if the PC party wins on June 7th, the first thing, or one of the first things that he will do is fire Hydro One's $6 million CEO. I mean, that's pathetic, to put it simply. Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, $6.2 million, I think anybody would agree with is an unbelievable amount of money, but it really speaks to a larger problem, and that problem is a climate under the Ontario Liberal government where you are taking care of friends of the government, donors of the government, first and foremost, over the people of Ontario. 6.2 million. I mean, they're justifying this, saying it's fair compensation, but the CEO of Hydro-Quebec makes $540,000 a year compared to that $6.2 million. That's just really two paychecks for the CEO of Hydro One for the entire annual salary of the Hydro-Quebec CEO. It's not market compensation. It's not fair to the people of Ontario. Here is this person making, $250,000 a paycheck,
right.
and Ontario families are struggling between, well, do we pick heating the home today or feeding my family? And these are the types of things that are unacceptable and that absolutely must be changed. And the Ontario PC party, if elected, we're going to work on that. We're going to address the Board of Executives making millions of dollars off the backs of taxpayers, and line by line, we are going to audit these inefficiencies that exist within the government. There's so much waste happening out there, and that's where we have to start.
That's right. I mean, it is appalling to see that families in rural Ontario, in the GTA, have to decide between heating their home or putting food on the table. I mean, where do you see that? Where else do you see that?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just mind-blowing, because I speak to a lot of the Persian community members, and they tell me that they're having a hard time paying their hydro bills, If we make a comparison between now and maybe 5 years ago, the number has skyrocketed.
Oh, yeah. Sure has.
People are paying $300, $400, $500, $600 for hydro, and that's just not fair, So I'm confident that Mr. Ford is going to put forward policies that are in line with people's values and that sort of tackle the root problem. So what do you think the first or the second step is to addressing the energy situation in this province?
Right, and the energy situation, Ari, I mean, to be very honest, is going to take a little bit of time to fix because it's taken 15 years to get into this mess. It's not going to be a fix that you can do overnight. But in addition to the inefficiencies, we need to look at the Green Energy Act. Now, I put that in quotes because it has nothing to do at all with being green. It's actually more of a bad contracts act.
That's right.
And we are now signing billions of dollars worth of energy contracts for energy we don't need. We're already making too much. We already sell energy at a loss to the United States of America. And we just drive west on the 401 and you'll see all of these windmills blowing or spinning at 4 o'clock in the morning when the capacity doesn't call for extra energy. And these are the types of contracts that we need to look at. And the Ontario Liberal government is still signing these contracts for, once again, friends of the government and donors. And this has got to end. I mean, we are having people struggle to pay their bills and a cost of living that is skyrocketing. We have to look at these government processes where they are signing billions of dollars of taxpayer money away. That has to end.
That's right. Well, this leads me to my other question. And my other question is regarding the state of Ontario right now, fiscally speaking. As you know, we have $318 billion debt. We're paying $12 billion a year, Stan, to finance that debt. What is the Ontario's PC's solution to this problem?
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, this drives away a lot of investors.
Of course it does.
And we need that foreign direct investment to come into Ontario to create good-paying jobs, stable jobs for the people of Ontario.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if people can really even grasp how big $312 billion is. It's such an astronomical amount of debt. And if you look across the entire planet, I mean literally, Ari, the entire planet, Ontario is the most indebted state or province in the world. And that's not the kind of legacy we want to leave. That's not the kind of reputation we want. And you spoke about what we're paying to service that debt. That's interest, ladies and gentlemen. That is what we pay on interest on this debt. Yeah, it's $12 billion a year. But if you want to really understand how much that is, that's $5,000 a second.
That's right.
A second that we are paying to interest. It's interest payments alone. That's money that doesn't go to hospitals. That's money that doesn't go to transit or infrastructure or education. And here we are talking about the mess that Ontario is in. Well, we need funding in all sorts of areas, such as the ones I just mentioned, but we are putting $1 billion of that into the interest payments alone. And this is a debt, Ari, that we're not going to pay off in our lifetime. We are leaving it to our kids and to our grandkids. And Kathleen Wynne is on the record saying that the next generation will gladly pay for this debt. I disagree. I think, we have it tough enough as it is for our younger generation. This is not something that we want to put on their backs, and it's our responsibility today to take steps towards fixing that, to take that problem off of future generations to come.
That's right. So Stan, speaking about the lack of respect for the taxpayers, as you know, the Liberal government is using taxpayers' money to fund attack ads against Doug Ford. The NPP for Willowdale, he's using taxpayers' money to put ads in the TTC subway station. What is your take on this? I mean, people should know about this. This is just unacceptable.
Yeah. Well, I hope people do realize that this is unacceptable, and it's true, Ari, and it speaks to that larger problem, again, of a government that's completely lost touch with the people of our community. That money shouldn't be used to campaign for an election, and here we are now, after 15 years of waste and scandal. Our money's being used to try and pull the wool over your eyes and say, no, you're not ready for a change just yet. We've been on the right track. And it's shameful, and I hope on June 7th everyone remembers that this is a very important decision that we have to make ahead of us.
That's right. I want to ask you about Doug Ford's recent policy announcement that anybody making minimum wage will not pay income tax. I mean, that is a game changer, Stan.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a huge step in the right direction. I mean, we've touched on this, Ari, that Ontario continues to have a higher cost of living again and again. And it's not enough for the Ontario Liberals to come out in an election year and talk about all these free giveaways that they're giving out, because inevitably all that's going to do is make Ontarians' cost of living even higher in the future generations. This policy announcement by Doug Ford is an actual, tangible, real step in the right direction. We are saying to the people of Ontario, the most vulnerable, the people making the least amount of money, no tax at the Ontario level. This is going to save them thousands of dollars a year. This is something that they can keep to do the other things in life that are more important, spending time with the loved ones and doing the things that they enjoy. And then, of course, once the PC party forms government on June 7th, that's not where it's going to end. There are billions of dollars in inefficiencies, hundreds of millions you can save right off the bat, and this is where we're going to start. And we're going to work tirelessly to bring down the cost of living. It's not just money in, it's money out, and we need to understand that.
That's right. Well, one of the other problems that we have in Willowdale is the school overcrowding. As you know, we speak to a lot of members of the community, and they tell us that they're having a hard time going to class because the classes are packed, the services are bad. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, well, a matter of going to class, they can't even get into the school. I mean, we were at a town hall at Earl Hague, maybe 3 months ago, where David Zimmer and the Minister of Education was there in attendance. And the gymnasium at Earl Hague was packed, absolutely packed, standing room only. And the only message that the Ontario Liberal government had to give on this overcrowding issue was simply, we're going to talk about it. We're going to do something about it. And that is exactly what they've been saying for 15 years. And in terms of this school overcrowding issue, it's very simple. For those maybe who don't understand what's happening here, right now in Willowdale, people who can see Earl Hague from their balconies can't go to that, can't send their kids to that high school. And instead what we're doing is we're actually busing them out to schools like Vanier and well out of the neighborhood. And that means no band practice, no sports teams for these students. That means no childhood. I mean, that's a natural part of growing up. And the problem to this is actually quite simple to address. It's a funding formula that doesn't make sense. It's dated. It's red tape and a regulation that we should be very easily able to fix. Essentially what they're saying is, here's some money to the Toronto District School Board. And that money is seen as a whole for the TDSB, not based on a needs-by-needs case where, for example, in Willowdale, we are now at 2041 in terms of our population growth. In other words, we're 15 years ahead of where we expected to be in terms of population in Willowdale. That obviously means that we have more students. That obviously means we have higher demands on our schooling system. But the TDSB is seen as treating Willowdale as equally as other neighborhoods where maybe they aren't as crowded. So they're only allocated funds as a whole and not able to select neighborhoods.
That's right.
And again, what that boils down to is a simple regulatory change. It's a lack of political will that has led to this inaction on the part of the Ontario Liberal government. It's something that I'm committed to, and I promise the people of Willowdale, if I'm elected, this is going to be an issue that is not going to be discussed for 15 years. This is something that's going to be acted upon and acted upon soon.
That's great. And can you tell us what the other students or high school students or university students tell you personally when you go and knock on their door? You know,
Absolutely.
I'm sure there's a lot of stories they share with you. You know, in regards to them not being happy, them not getting enough services.
Absolutely, Ari, and I'm going to start that off by saying we're very blessed in our campaign to have such a high level of involvement from today's youth. I'm talking university students. I remember when I went to U of T, the Conservative Association there consisted of 2 students, and we have several members of the Ryerson Campus Conservatives executives who are with us
That's right.
and volunteering for our team. Well, I had the pleasure of speaking with their group a few weeks ago. They have maybe 50, 60 members at this point, and they're so involved. They understand what's going on. You know, it really does give me hope for the future. But what I'm hearing at the door, Ari, is that students are in debt. Their cost of living is way too high. They want to afford to move out. They can't. It's hard for them to find even minimum wage jobs at this point.
right.
And there's no real hope of employment for so many sort of disciplinary studies that, for example, you graduate with a Bachelor of Arts in 2018, your chances of employment are drastically low at this point. There's a huge skills gap that exists upon graduation for many of these students, and it's something that they're talking about, and rightly so, very worried about for the future. We need to narrow that skills gap. We need to make sure also that we're not leaving this $312 billion debt, which is projected to be $325 billion next
right.
year, for this generation to pay off. Could you imagine not only trying to find a job, not only trying to move out and start a family, move on with your adult life, but having to pay for the mistakes and the overspending of your parents?
That's right.
That's what we're doing to the young generation now, and that has to end.
Stan, let me just say this. It seems like the Liberal government will do anything and say anything to get reelected.
Shameful.
I don't know if you go on Twitter, but there was a recent tweet from the Ontario Liberal Party comparing Mr. Ford to Donald Trump. I believe these are signs of desperation. They cannot campaign on their failed record,
Right.
so they got to resort to these kind of scare tactics. What is your response to the young progressive voters, the high school students, the university students, that might be scared, Stan, to vote for the PC party on June 7th?
Well, it's another sign of how the Liberal government is out of touch with the people of this community. Kathleen Wynne would love to run against the president of a foreign country, which she is comparing Doug Ford to. Really anything to distract away from her record, because if we stick to her record, her government's record over the last 15 years, you have a long list of reasons not to vote for them again. It has nothing to do with a foreign country who has no real control over what's happening at Queen's Park. Let's talk about the e-health. Let's talk about the gas plants. Let's talk about her former chief of staff, the Ontario Liberal former chief of staff, who was recently sentenced to jail time for his involvement in the email scandals and covering up information. This is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the scandal and the waste that has plagued this government for 15 years. So, no, Kathleen Wynne, you're running here and you're running against Doug Ford, not the president of a foreign country.
That's right. I'm sure you know this, but the Liberal government recently announced their plan for a basic income for this province. This means that it would cost this province more than it spends on education.
Right.
So if you look at the figures, the basic income for Ontario alone would be roughly 30 billion. Ontario's education budget is 23 billion. This is the problem. When the Liberals and the NDP platforms promise billions, Stan, billions and more spending to win an election. Moody's, I don't know if you know what that is, that's the credit agency, recently announced that they changed Ontario's outlook from stable to negative following the budget announcement. This drives away potential investors, potential immigrants coming here for a better life. What is your message to the diverse community in Willowdale that have a lack of understanding about these current issues going on in this province?
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's pretty clear. I think the everyday person would agree that paying your MasterCard with your Visa is not financial sense. And, here we have another example of a government that will desperately do anything to cling on to power, and that includes swiping that credit card on the backs of taxpayers. So the message to our community is very simple. We all agree that we have to do great things. We have to help the less fortunate. We have to invest in education, healthcare. My parents are seniors. I mean, this is another huge can of worms that we can open in terms of the lack of service we're providing. We have so many important things we need to take care of in this province, but we are continuously spending money that isn't there. And we are now at the point where that debt is going to be the biggest expenditure in terms of interest payments that we have.
Right.
And that is going to climb. I mean, it doesn't take Moody's to tell us that we are in a financial mess. First thing we need to do is clean up that mess. We need to bring transparency back to government. The Ontario Liberals have not opened up their books. They have not been transparent. The Auditor General has requested numerous times for them to be more transparent about their financial figures, and they have not been. Now, these are the people that the people of Ontario, this is the government the people of Ontario has elected in the Ontario Liberals, and 15 years of lack of transparency ends on June 7th. It's time to open up those books. It's time to find out where we can start to be more financially responsible. Then we can move forward in doing all the important things that we know must be done in this province.
That's right. Well, as you know, there's 50 days left, Stan.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a lot of time.
No, not.
When you're out there campaigning, knocking on doors, getting out the message and saying hi to the community members.
Right.
What is the best way for you to attract those voters that don't typically vote PC? I mean, you're somebody that wants to represent everybody in Willowdale, right? You want to be a voice for everybody, not just for one person or for one
Absolutely.
community. What do you think the best strategy is going forward from now on?
Well, strategy I leave to the campaign team, of course, but in terms of making a difference, I've said this before, Arya, and you've heard me say this before. I believe the government's job is quite simple. The job of government is supposed to be a voice for the people it governs.
That's right.
It's supposed to represent those that elect them. And that's not been the case the last decade and a half. I've heard the same broken promises from the Ontario Liberals that you have, and really, they're not any closer to fixing those major problems today than they were a decade and a half ago. So beyond strategy, my priority is to make sure that we are knocking on every door that we can. And I understand, everyone's life is busy, and there's more important things right now, your family, your job, your school, all of that. But with 50 days to go, as you said, this decision you're going to be making on June 7th is upon us. And it's time to start thinking about where you want the direction of this province to head. And that's why the conversations at the door are so important for me, because I believe that whoever is elected to any level of government needs to be responsible to the people that elected them. So I'm going to listen to your voice and hear what you think we need to do, what we need to do to fix this province and to make life better at home in Willowdale, and I'm going to act on that promise. I'm going to act on those words.
That's right. One thing that our viewers can do is always come to your campaign office.
Yes.
And reach out to you and talk to you about policy, about what your plans are for Willowdale. Can you just tell our viewers a little bit about the campaign office?
Sure.
And what the best way is for them to contact you? Because
Sure.
some of them might not speak English very well.
Yes.
Or they might not be able to sort of explain themselves,
Yeah, and Willowdale's wonderful that way. It's like a perfect microcosm of the rest of the country.
That's
We're
right.
very diverse. We've got pretty much every ethnic group you can imagine living under the same community in harmony. And we definitely have that reflected in our campaign team. If you leave us a message, you can call 647-560-9224. You can leave a message in any language. We'll be able to respond to you. Same goes for our email, stan@stanshow.ca. We have Farsi speakers. We have Mandarin speakers. We have people from the Filipino community on our team. So language won't be a concern. You can also drop by 4828 Yonge Street. It's just north of Yonge and Shepherd. I mean, we're not always there because we're canvassing a lot these days, but if we're around and the lights are on, please drop in, and we'd love to have a chat and have a coffee with you. And other than that, it's just a matter of being involved and paying attention to what's going on.
That's right. Stan, I'm just going to speak Farsi to the viewers for a second and explain sort of the situation right now. خانم آقایان، از اون چیزی که خب شنیدین 50 روز دیگه انتخابات پروینشال هست. ما کمپین آفیسمون نزدیک یانگ اند شپرد هست. لطفاً تشریف بیارین و با استن صحبت کنین. هر مشکلی داشتین، اگه هایدرو واسهتون زیاده، حالا ایژوکیشن واسهتون مهمه، گریدلاک، ترانسپورتیشن، ترافیکی که وجود داره در یانگ استریت، میتونین بیاین و با کاندید خوبمون استنشو صحبت کنید باشون. خب بسیار سپاسگزارم که با ما بودید. اگه سوالی داشتید میتونید به استن ایمیل بزنید و با خودم شخصا تماس بگیرین. Stan, 50 days to go, huh?
5-0, not much time, my friend.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank
and
you.
I look forward to seeing you in the future.
You bet.
Thank you very much. بسیار سپاسگزارم.